Hey fellow Loresmyths, super good to see you. Welcome back. My name is Chris. I run a company called Loresmyth. We are a tabletop role-playing game creator. We make books like this. And in this video, I wanted to take a deep dive to answer a question that we get often, which is why are creators launching new Kickstarter campaigns when backers are still waiting to get their goods from the previous one? I can definitely understand why some creators might have earned a bad reputation from not having delivered yet and already starting a new campaign. But crowdfunding also has evolved from what it was 5-10 years ago and what it is today. So hopefully in this video I can give you a little bit more insight, at least how it works for us, Loresmyth. And it has everything to do with how our production cycles alternate and not wanting to have creation teams sit idle when they've just finished a project. They want to move straight on into developing the next project. So surprise, surprise, it's not about money grabbing and just trying to haul in as much money as we can, rake in the cash and go on a big holiday. It's totally not like that. So without further ado, let's jump into this video. Let me know in the comments if you thought it was insightful. It's a pretty long video, so grab a coffee, grab a tea, and I hope you enjoy it. All right, let's dive in. So as you probably have heard, we are launching a brand new Kickstarter in just 2 weeks from now, Remarkable Guilds and Their Heroes. So obviously we are super excited about launching a new Kickstarter, but it also raises the question for some people like, hey, you're launching a new Kickstarter campaign, but I haven't received my pledge items from the previous campaign. So how did this work? So I definitely understand that some creators have earned themselves somewhat of a bad reputation when it comes to just launching campaign after campaign, and people are still waiting to get their items from the previous campaigns. So that's not fun, and I can definitely understand why some backers are, somewhat reluctant to participate in a new campaign when they're still waiting for the other one to send out the goods. So obviously I can't really comment on other creators, but what I can do is explain really in depth in how we, Loresmyth, handle this. And so let's take a deep dive. Let's have a look at how this works, and hopefully by the end of this video you'll understand a little bit better about how sequencing Kickstarter campaigns work and how product development cycles kind of work in tandem with those Kickstarter campaigns. And I think by the end of this video, you also have a little better understanding and appreciation why it makes sense for creators to launch a new campaign even when people haven't gotten their packages yet. And I know that sounds contradictory, but I think after this video, it makes a lot more sense. So let's start at the beginning and really simplify things. So Kickstarter is the most popular crowdfunding platform, and at its core, creators use it to raise funds to be able to develop their idea, whether it's a Dungeons and Dragons book or whatever it may be. And if they succeed, they have the funds, the capital to develop their product. And once it's done, they ship it out to everyone who participated. So I think especially when Kickstarter started out, creators were really using it serially. So they start a campaign, they raise funds, they create whatever they wanted to create, and once it's finished, they ship it out, and perhaps they start a new campaign. Crowdfunding has evolved dramatically, and for many creators, not only small but even big creators, crowdfunding has been pretty much turned into a business model, and for many companies, it's their lifeblood. So you would expect that once a product is finished, you could basically sustain your business just by the product sales alone, but this is not always the case. So you definitely see smaller and even bigger creators still rely on Kickstarter's overfunding, so there's money in the bank to kind of smooth out the peaks and lows from product sales in between Kickstarter campaigns. So in our case for Loresmyth, this is partially true. So our product sales are maturing and we're getting to a point where we are able to sustain the company just by product sales alone. There are certain periods in the year where sales are low, and that's when overfunding Kickstarters definitely are used as a buffer to kind of smooth out everything. We have fairly high operational costs with a growing team to create everything that we create. So money left in the bank after a Kickstarter is definitely welcome, and it enables us to keep investing in not only developing new products, but also manufacturing new product runs of best-selling books, hiring new staff, training staff, spending money on our building, rent, and all that jazz. So now that we've looked at the basics, what is the main reason that we as a creator start a new campaign when we do? And for us, Loresmyth, it actually has everything to do with how our development cycles alternate. And the short answer is, and you can stop watching the video after this, is that once our writers and artists and the whole team is done creating the product and it's delivered to the book printer, we have nothing to do. We're done, our job's done, and we can move on. So obviously as a company, we don't want to have our development teams idling for up to half a year until book printing and transportation is done before starting on the next title. So as we're going to look in depth, is that we alternate our development cycles so that they line up effectively and that our teams are always working all year round creating cool products. So suddenly a lot of sunlight coming through. It's very important to point out that when we launch new Kickstarter campaigns, it's always in close communication with the team at Kickstarter. So there's no scenario where we as a creator launch a new campaign without the approval of the customer satisfaction team at Kickstarter. We always are in communication with the status of our past project fulfillments and our plans with new upcoming campaigns, so we get the green light to launch a new campaign. So if Kickstarter thinks we have a good track record as a creator, and we can inform them well enough about the status of developments and fulfillment, then they either give us the green light or they don't. So here we are. I tried to create a graphic that shows you a couple of years, and every year Loresmyth develops 2 product titles, mostly books, in parallel. So how does this work? We've established a team that is able to work on 2 product titles at the same time. And the way we've structured our development cycles is by breaking them down into 5 plus 5 months each. So in total, we take 10 months development time maximum for each product title, whether it's a book or a card deck. They always take 10 months maximum. Then looking at this graph, for example, for 2021, you can see this pink block is 2 blocks of 5 months for that given product title. And it's followed by another one, the blue one. And in parallel, you can see we're working on a green product title and another one and another one. And this is sort of like a relay race where one product follows the other. So here at the top, you can see the entire year broken down in 12-month blocks. And these flags are when we launch our Kickstarters. So you can see that every time in the 3rd or the 4th month, we launch our first Kickstarter of the year. And then late in the year, we launch our second Kickstarter. And you can see a pattern where the moments we launch each Kickstarter with these dotted lines is when we alternate the first and the second phase of the product development of each given product title. So let me explain that a little differently. So for example, you can see here with the first Kickstarter flag of 2021, you can see there's two things happening. There's that pink reddish block that is the second one, and that means we're in the 5 months finishing that product. And when it's finished, it gets delivered to the book printer, and basically our teams have nothing to do with it anymore. We've written the book, we've edited, it's illustrated layout, we have a complete final PDF version that gets shipped out to all backers that have pledged for digital items. But once it's submitted to our book manufacturer, it's completely out of our hands. From that moment on, we're just waiting for it to get printed and shipped out across the world and get stocked in the various warehouses. So from that moment on, we don't want our teams to be idle. We want them to be able to start developing the next product title. So the way we've structured our product cycles to alternate is that these striped blocks is what we call pre-production. So every product title has 5 months where we're in pre-production, trying to get as much of the product made as we can. And then the second 5 months, we finish up whatever needs finishing up. And after that, at the end of those 5 months, again, the product is done and it gets delivered to our manufacturer to get printed and stocked internationally in the warehouses. So as you can see, these alternate. So whenever there's one product in post-production getting finished, in that same 5 months, we are starting up the next product. And this alternates every time and again. So if we look at 2022, where we are now, the first flag here is the Remarkable Guilds Kickstarter. And you can see here that the 5 months leading up to that Kickstarter, we were already working on a Remarkable Guilds book, using those 5 months to get as much done as possible. And by the time we launch that Kickstarter, we have 5 months left in which we finish whatever we need to finish for the book, which usually is still quite a lot. And by the time the next Kickstarter launches later in the year, which in this case is going to be a new Wondrous Expeditions book, by that time Remarkable Guilds has been delivered to the book manufacturer, and our team has already worked in those same 5 months on the pre-production for the one that kickstarts after the Remarkable Guilds Kickstarter. So to phrase that a little differently, so in 2 weeks from now, when the Remarkable Guilds Kickstarter starts, not only are we spending 5 months to finish the actual Remarkable Guilds book, but in those same 5 months, our teams are also working on the 5 months pre-production for the next Wondrous Expeditions book, and we finish that product in the next 5 months. And as you can see, this pattern continues indefinitely. So there's a couple of interesting things going on here. Obviously, a year has 12 months and not 10. And this actually works out beautifully because it frees up the actual month of Kickstarter. It acts as a little buffer. So we figured that in a year, effectively you have 10 months and not 12 months because you have holidays and you accommodate for any kind of delays, etc. So there's a little buffer in there. Another really crucial thing to note here is that we invest heavily, sometimes up to 25,000 euros before we even launch a Kickstarter for a given product. So in the case of Remarkable Guilds, we've already worked with a big team on it for 5 months. Large amounts of writing has been done, large amounts of artwork have been made, the cover artwork, map artwork. So there's a lot in progress that we pre-invest, not knowing if a Kickstarter will fund. Obviously, this was different when we were starting out with Loresmyth and we were more like a small company and a hobby. Then typically you don't take such a big risk and you go back to what Kickstarter was originally intended for, is to raise funds for an idea, and if you manage to raise those funds, then you're going to make it. However, Loresmyth matured in such a way and our products are so successful that we kind of take the gamble that each Kickstarter will fund, and we take the risk of investing quite heavily in advance, because this allows us to really smooth out the production cycles and not have our teams idling. But it does mean we invest a lot of money in advance to a Kickstarter campaign, and this puts in perspective Kickstarters heavily overfunding. So people sometimes ask, well, you only needed 15,000 euro to reach your campaign goal, and the Kickstarter raised 200,000. What are you going to do with all of that money? Well, in fact, going into the Kickstarter, we're already basically building up a loss of 25,000 euros of those 5 months that we've been working on it. So we first recoup that. Then we actually need upwards of 100,000 euros to actually fully complete the book, to manufacture it, and to accommodate for all the costs of logistics, transport, etc. So don't think that all of that excess funding, that overfunding money is instantly profit. It's completely not like that. If anything, the tax companies get it first and Kickstarter gets their money first, etc., before we take any real profits. But it's interesting that with Loresmyth maturing, we've been able to adjust our development cycles and start way in advance of each new Kickstarter. And behind the scenes, the product is already taking shape in a big way before we even launch it, and you get to see it for the first time, which is really exciting. So there we go. I really hope that this deep dive has learned you a little bit more about how we as a creator develop our products and how they interconnect with when we launch our Kickstarters. And hopefully it has also shown you that we as a creator are not out to launch campaign after campaign just to rake in the funds and go to Ibiza or wherever. The real reason, there's a given amount of time when our teams are actually working on the product, but once they're delivered to the book manufacturer, there's really no reason for us as a creator to have our teams idling all this time, just basically waiting to start on the next. Instead, we already start working on the next product title to get a head start, basically, so the product is already very, very far done by the time that we launch the Kickstarter for it. So there we go. That was the deep dive into our production cycles, and I'm very happy that you made it all the way through the end. This was definitely an intense one. Consider subscribing to our Loresmyth channel if you enjoy what we do. Comment what you thought about this video. Perhaps you would like to see me talk more about how we make the things that we make. There's a link in the description to join our Discord channel, which is a very fun place to be. And definitely don't miss out the Remarkable Guild's Kickstarter, which launches in just 2 weeks from now.